Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Big Rican On Sports podcast. I am your host. I am the Big Rican. Today is Saturday, September the 4th, 2021, and this episode has a title. This episode has a title because the gentleman I'm about to bring on, I have not seen since the millennia had hit and before I had children. My daughter will be 21 in May. I have not seen this man since there was hair on this head. I have not seen this man since right before the first time since 1994 the Cleveland Indians didn't make the playoffs in the year 2000. He is a very talented sports blogger from the city of Cleveland, the other home of my heart. Ladies and gentlemen, JC Blue Note himself, Mr. Jim Crinitti. Jim, welcome to the show. I know we've been talking about this for a while, so I figured let's get you on right before we start the Brown season. How are you, sir?
Not too bad, Nessie. Ladies and gentlemen, let me actually put it to you this way. I have known this man so long that we actually ended up in junior college together, sitting in a Matchbox 20 chat room, skipping class all day long.
How did I know you were going with the Matchbox 20 chat room? How did I know? How did I know? It's also true, unfortunately.
Yes. It's we go back even outside of my best friend Adam. I've probably known this man longer than anybody that I went to high school with.
Yeah, you figure I moved out there in late 93, and you and I probably got together somewhere after the first of 94 and have been, hit and miss because I end up moving back to New York in 2000 and you're doing your thing out there. So it's great. I got to tell you, I love reading your stuff. I really do. And do you remember the Wise Ass Sports Network, James? Do you remember doing that with me in that same computer lab?
We've been trying to put something like this together for 15 years, 20 years, and it never lined up. Things went one way, things went another. And I apologize for my parents. I literally just woke up off the couch watching about 3 hours worth of Netflix. I will not tell you what I want. I almost want to plead the fifth.
Dude, if it's the Twilight movies, I'm turning the episode off right now.
No, but because of my grandmother who recently passed away,
I know
they are saved in my favorites.
I know, and I
will say it was another teen themed trilogy, and I will leave it at that. And it's not that hard to figure out. And Jim, Netflix produces it.
Okay, Jim, I was drinking cold brew for a reason. I won't get it, but it's okay. But I will say this back on the Twilight thing first. There were some of my favorite sequence in the whole movie is after she punches Taylor Lautner in the face. And they go back to the house, and he comes flying out of nowhere. And the dad comes out and goes, "What happened?" And I have never seen a young actor go so deadpan as he did when he said, "I kissed Bella. She broke her wrist punching me in the face. It was a big misunderstanding."
My grandmother, I swear to God, nearly bust a gut when I showed that to her because I would still have to transport my PlayStation 4 down there with the box set. It's the only thing that I took out of the house after she passed away was I bought her the 5-disc Blu-ray set, and knowing that she didn't actually know how to use it, so the only way that we could watch them together was me actually having to bring my PlayStation down there, and then they were on cable constantly, and she didn't even have to bother. I actually took off work and I got ridiculed by Adam and everybody for months because I saw the 5th one in the theater the Monday after it came out, just because I wanted to be able to tell her about it, knowing she couldn't see it for 6 months.
Well, we actually went to see that in the theater as well, and I have to say, the end of the 4th film, we're supposed to be talking about sports from our freaking Twilight. Jesus Christ. Uh, the end of the fourth film where she wakes up and her eyes are red, that was pretty cool. And
Yes.
then the fifth one was a pretty good film until you realize it was a vision and not one of the greatest fight scenes you've ever seen.
Right.
So let's segue from Twilight into the first topic of the night we're going to talk about. And since
gladly, please, yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen listening, there is one fundamental thing that Jim and I don't agree on outside of the fact that, he's an Islander fan and the only year I ever rooted for hockey was 1994. And I, of course, rooted for the New York Rangers. We don't agree on college football in one huge thing in my life. And that is Jim's nickname for my favorite team is Overrated State. And I have gone round and round with him on Facebook posts telling him to go shove things certain places about his opinion on that team. But I want to ask you, and you're a little more withdrawn from this. All kidding aside, Minnesota's a good team, and Ibrahim getting hurt is huge. There's no way he didn't blow the Achilles out. None. What was your impression? Because you said you went to sleep just like I did, for various reasons. Maybe being up too early in the morning before.
Yeah, it's allergy season. I was out by 7 o'clock. I actually ended up missing the game and only ended up catching half the highlights on YouTube the next morning.
Okay, so we had talked a little bit before we started recording. You seem to feel as I do is that Ohio State's biggest question mark going to come into the season isn't just the quarterback. It's going to be that defensive unit. In the highlights you saw, where do you see them needing to make immediate improvement with Oregon coming into the shoe on Saturday?
Honestly, at this point, I don't see them really needing to make many changes because the same Oregon is going to come in that comes into when they go on a road for a big ranked early season matchup. They're going to come in flat. They're going to come in cross country, and the Pac-12 does not match up. I'm sorry to say it, and as much of as a Buckeye hater that I am, and I will actually preface that by saying before you have half your audience shut off right now, it is not Buckeyes that I have the problem with. I have cousins that went to Ohio State. I grew up a Buckeye fan. It is currently the elitist mentality of Buckeye fans that I cannot stand. It was the day that it was announced in the 07 championship that they were playing the Florida Gators. And you know me, you will not find a bigger Gator fan than me. And when they were installed as a 18-point favorite and said that they were going to win that game by 30, and then Ted Ginn blows out his knee on the opening kickoff, that was the day I stopped being a Buckeye fan.
Hold on.
That being said,
there's another story to that. Let me interrupt you real quick. He didn't blow his knee out. Fellow Brush High School alum Roy Hall jumped on him and broke his ankle.
Do you remember Roger Plants by chance that we went to school with? He might have been a year or two behind you. It's Roger ended up joining the military, and his greatest claim to fame. Now, Roger is currently working security for the UFC, like ringside security. It's he walks the guys out to the cage.
That's him?
His greatest, yes. It's
he looks a lot different.
Yeah. It's I wouldn't recognize him if I saw him right now. First of all, I haven't seen him in person in about 10 years. But I definitely know it's him. But his greatest claim to fame was Roy Hall came up to him in the weight room at our old high school and slapped him on the ass.
Now, Roy Hall graduated with my sister, and according to my sister, to this day, there are still people from that class that will not speak to him because of that.
It's, and wouldn't you know that between you and I, the 5 years that we were at that school, they won 8 games, maybe.
2.
They went my 4 years. They went 0-10, 4-6, 2-8, 0-10. So they won 6 in my 4 years.
Which means they won 8 in mine, because I think my class won 2 games.
Yeah. and he gets there, and they go to the state playoffs.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Still have not been back to a game there since.
I have not been to a game since the weekend the school was open 75 years, which is now 25 years ago. And I only went because there were a lot of alumni from the band that I was friends with that were there.
Ironically enough, the last high school football game I went to was their big rival, and you know exactly who I'm talking about. And I currently live in that city, and I was actually going to see the opposing squad play against our alma mater, and they had the score run up on them, so it was rather justified. My hometown beat our alma mater.
My sister married a guy who went to our former rival and played against them and beat the hell out of them.
Which honestly is not hard to do, considering they've actually been to since we always remembered that they were in state semifinals or state playoffs in Division 4 every single year.
But remember, they had to go to our school to get their new head coach. So
yeah.
So we can coach, we just can't play. Anyway, so in all seriousness, I thought the same thing about Oregon going forward. I think Mario Cristobal is a great coach. Don't get me wrong. He's a great coach out there. I like the way they breed offensive linemen, just kind of like Big Ten schools do too. But right. The one thing I thought of when I was watching because I fell asleep at halftime, so I watched the highlights of the second half. And I thought the one thing that they really need to work on is the linebacker play, which I think hurt them last year too. And also CJ Stroud, they need to get him in rhythm earlier, just like any young quarterback. Let's use this as an example. Urban used to set Tebow up with easy throws to get him in rhythm the first year he was a starter when they won that championship and he won that Heisman. Do you think they can overcome the defensive issues they have with the offense that you saw in the highlights?
I would like to think so, because those Pac-12 schools like to run like they're the SEC, but the temperatures are starting to change. It's even though they both are going to play on turf, it's going to be in the mid 60s. It's not going to be in the 80s or 90s out there. That will slow some teams down. Can they actually get enough into that second level to make it competitive? I don't see it. I'm sorry. It's the Alabama conundrum. It's not that it's not the weaknesses. It's just they're so far outmatched that it's just trying to keep it close is going to be considered a moral victory at this point. Because when you get down to playoff time, you're not going to see those Pac-12 teams there.
No, I agree,
and I imagine we're going to talk more about that later.
Oh yeah, well, no, we're going to get into the expansion, absolutely. But I want to ask you this: with having lived out there, and I understand you're not the biggest fan, but having watched them anyway, does Ryan Day have it in him to play bully ball like this team, like this program did in that championship game in that first playoff under Urban Meyer? They have the big offensive line, and if you saw, 3 different running backs were carving Minnesota up. Does Ryan Day, who is an offensive guru, have it in him to play bully ball?
I do. It's and that pains me to say. And granted, me being a Gator fan, I was a huge Herb guy. When he went to Ohio State, I lost all respect for him. Again, taking the payday and everything, to try and gravy train to a national title. I'm not going to elaborate too much more on that. But the thing is that with the Big Ten, Penn State is one of their better competitions. Michigan's, I was listening to CBS National Radio on the way back from dinner with the family tonight, and they were actually saying, "Can you ever remember a Michigan season where coming in there are absolutely no expectations whatsoever?" Wisconsin's not going to be there. Minnesota had their great run last year. Indiana got beat today. It's Ohio State and everyone else. So I think he can play bully ball. But I think the big key for Ohio State right now is the quarterback play, because for the first time since really even before Herb got there, they actually have a quarterback who's going to stand in the pocket and throw the ball down the field as opposed to try and take off. And I'm sorry, this is not trying to come off as saying that they can't, anything of that type of argument. Those running option style quarterbacks, they can win in the Big Ten. They cannot win national championships, because when the weather gets cold and you're expected to run, that's when teams are going to stack 8 and 9 in the box and start and start closing off those gaps. So I think now that Ohio State is now trying to maybe get into that Alabama or Georgia mindset with that pro style offense, I think this is actually where they can start to maybe kind of catch up to some of those other teams that have blown them by when it comes time for national semifinals and championship games, as opposed to conference championship games.
Exactly. Now, I want to point something out, and I actually said this to our old friend Nick Creedy, who we went to school with the other day. I will take this to my grave. Urban Meyer inserting JT Barrett back into the starting lineup the year after Cardell took them to a championship is what cost Ohio State a chance to win the first two. Because Cardell was a pocket quarterback. He had the big arm. God knows the guy could throw the ball a country mile. But once you took him out and you could stack the box, you eliminated Zeke. You neutralized that offensive line. They won that championship because teams could not stack the box. Because if you did, Devin Smith was going to run past you, and Cardell could overthrow him. So Fields, while he was a running style quarterback, he did like to throw the ball in the pocket. You did see him shift himself more than you would, say, JT Barrett. Obviously not. Haskins was a drop back. And by the way, for the guys I'm wearing tonight, I got a feeling he's going to be scary coming down the pipe in black and yellow. Haskins was a pocket quarterback. Fields was kind of a hybrid, which is why I think he's going to do well in the NFL, because he can get away and he can move the pocket, but he wanted to throw the football. He wanted to make the big play. I mean, even after he got hurt in the semifinal last year, you saw he wanted to throw the football.
Right.
I like CJ Stroud. I really do. I see him as almost a Justin Fields part B. Not quite as athletic. Arm is just as strong. I think we saw that in some of the throws in the second half the other night. But yes, he wants to throw the ball first. He will run as a last resort, but he will shift the pocket before he decides to take off. Can the Pac-12 hang with that if they play bully ball and he moves the pocket to hit guys that are running as fast as SEC guys in the secondary?
Offensive, when Ohio State has possession of the ball, no, it's something that if they can actually find ways to maybe get some quarterback pressure and put some pressure on Stroud, this is actually where I think they can make the game a lot more interesting. Because with Ohio State, as bad as their defense is, and let's just call it what it is, going even back to last year, it's bad. It's the reason why Alabama could have scored on will at them. Alabama could have put 70 on the board last year if they really, really wanted to. And this is actually what is going to cost. The Buckeyes are a top 5 team right now. Will they actually be there at the end? Possibly, because of how weak the Big Ten is on the whole. It's and how their schedule lines up. But it's something that you're going to start to see maybe some closer games that really shouldn't be. You're going to let some teams back in. You're not going to maybe have, those upsets where you're going to be an 11-2, 10-3 type ball club or something like that. You're not going to get upset in the Big Ten championship game, but it's going to be something that's going to make voters start to question in both polls to take into account when those rankings come out.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And so since we started talking about polls at the end of the year, let's jump right into that part of it. Let's talk about college football playoff expansion, which in my opinion is overdue. Now, I had mentioned I took this on the road in the first year I did it in 2018, and I did a live episode from Columbus the night before they played Tulane, Urban's first game back from that garbage Zach Smith suspension. So I have been a proponent of 8 in the playoff every year, and here's why I say 8. You have the Power 5 conferences doing this. Well, why aren't all 5 conference champions in the tournament? Number 2, you should have to win your conference to get in. Here's a little trivia question for you. 3 times since the AP poll came into being, a non-conference champion has won a national championship. Do you know who they are?
I know one of them was Ohio State a couple of years ago.
No, they won the conference that year.
You know what? You are correct. Is because I actually was making the argument all over. I made a post saying that Penn State deserved to get in that one year because of the fact that the Buckeyes didn't even get to their conference championship game. I honestly do not. That's a great question, Mike.
When you watched the game the other night, you saw the first one. That was 1937, and that was the University of Minnesota. The other 2, Alabama, both times. The year they beat LSU in the BCS championship game after LSU beat them during the season. And when they won the college football playoff, when they got in the year after Ohio State as a non-conference champion, when they beat Georgia on the biggest blown coverage in the history of the Georgia Dome. But I will say this:
Ohio State, at least on a collegiate level, because with the way that the Atlanta Falcons play anymore, there's got to be some worse ones out there that we're just forgetting about.
How about blown coverage against a good defense? So, but here's the difference between Bama getting in the year they won with Tua and the Ohio State team the year before. Remember, they went into Norman and beat the 5th-ranked Oklahoma Sooners by 20 points. They were on the road in Camp Randall and beat a top 10 Wisconsin. And then what nobody remembers from that year is the game. Game day started at 7 a.m. that year and ran till noon because it was 2 versus 3, that Michigan-Ohio State game. So you have wins in 3 wins in the top 10. That's why Ohio State got into that playoff. I agree with you. The other thing people don't remember is they were the 3 seed in that playoff.
Yeah.
Washington was the 4.
Yeah. How they actually managed to be a 3 that
because
year
they had the best resume in the country. They had the loss against Penn State, which I agree. Which, first of all, another one. If Urban takes a timeout and sets up protection for that field goal, I think the guy hits it. And we're talking about Ohio State being the 1 seed. But you're talking about the best resume in the country. The next year, Bama had 1 win in the top 15. 1. And they got in.
Yeah, but that's also we're kind of splitting hairs with that a little bit because yes, Ohio State did have the best resume in the country, but still, you're talking Big Ten with maybe 2, at best 3 legitimate conference contenders against an SEC conference that, yes, everyone is sick and tired of hearing about the SEC, but you've got 5 or 6 teams that could make a legitimate argument all the way down until probably rivalry weeks to still be able to throw their name into the hat.
But is there argument based on their schedule, which we all know the SEC until now when they talked about expansion, schedule soft. They do. And there's no way around that. When the week before rivalry week, the kid, the defensive end who just decommitted from Alabama and went to Ohio State, do you want to know what he said? He said, I'm going to Ohio State because I don't want to play the University of Richmond the week in November.
Yeah.
That's a shot at Bama.
Yeah, but the problem is now with Bama, they just hung 40 plus on a top 10 Miami team. It's
Miami's a top 10 team.
I don't either, but it's still it's a high ranked opponent right out of the chute who's going to be
field?
in.
Was it a neutral field?
I pulling up the score here now. I actually didn't have it on earlier, and I can't believe that Clemson Georgia game is that close right now either. Right now, it's 7-0
Georgia should
Clemson
be
at the
blowing
half.
that team out.
Yeah, it's 7-0 Georgia at the time that we're recording this, and they just went to the half. I can't get it loaded up fast enough. It's even if it was neutral field, it's still Alabama and really everybody else, and it's trying to find lightning in a bottle. But the problem is Trevor Lawrence isn't there anymore. Georgia is going to get knocked out. But by the time the smoke clears, Florida's going to get knocked out because they're missing Kyle Trask. It's so they don't actually have the signal caller to be able to compete with the Alabamas. Oklahoma and really anybody else in the Big 12, they've got other things on their mind this year, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. It's Alabama, it's Ohio State, and pick names out of a hat basically, in terms of who's going to fill out that field.
So let's talk about the expansion now, because you're not going to go all day about this. So the expansion, they're talking 8 to 12 teams. So I had actually built a mock 8 from that year. So this was the 2018 season I built this from. Bama, of course, was the 1 seed. Clemson was the 2. No, I'm sorry. Clemson was the 1 and lost to Bama in the Sugar Bowl that year. Georgia was the 2. That's the year Bama and Georgia played for the national championship. Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield was the 3. And, of course, Bama was the 4. So, yes, those 4, I can't argue with Bama being in that tournament, but I'm sorry. I can argue with Bama being in that tournament for not winning their conference championship. So, if you go back to who won the conferences that year, Clemson won the ACC, Georgia won the SEC, Oklahoma won the Big 12, Ohio State won the Big 10, and USC won the Pac-12. So those 5 get in. Your next 3 are your 3 at-larges. So I took the group of 5, the best team, which was Central Florida. I took Bama. And the thing no one remembers is that Ohio State team beat the final remaining undefeated in the country in Wisconsin. So Wisconsin got in. So then you seed them. So the committee should only be doing this. Pick the 3 at-larges and seed them. That's it when it comes to the playoff. Your 5 conference champions get in. Seed them however you want. But at that point in time, what I said is make the lower seeds go on the road. No matter how cold it is, how packed would the horseshoe be if Bama had to go to Columbus in December?
Agreed. Yeah, I could definitely. I mean, we actually see how well it works in the NFL, and that's basically what college football is turning into, is the NFL light anymore. And we'll basically talk about the realignment here in a minute, I would imagine.
We're gonna have to do 2 episodes.
Yeah, it's and then with all of that, we've seen how it works in the NFL. We actually have seen now how it's actually started to work in things even like women's college basketball, where you basically slot your teams, and then whoever's the highest seed out of that portion of the bracket is going to host those games. So you've got 90,000 bowl games. It's if you win, they say if you're bowl eligible if you win 6 anymore. But you've got 130 some odd Division I schools. Yeah. Is it really necessary at this point? It's and they've actually tried to make some of these smaller bowls, like the Peach Bowl, mean something again. It was always the early bowl that you watched when you were setting up for dinner, with before the family all arrived on New Year's Day. It's something that you put on, and then once the family got there, then everybody got in the kitchen and then started moving chairs around. Let's be honest. And they're actually trying to make something out of it. This is where I actually
think by the time the Rose Bowl started.
Exactly. In my case, we were basically done cleaning up, and then the women were were telling stories at one, and the guys were playing poker in the other. By the time the Rose Bowl game started, and then
Yeah.
everybody left at halftime because the weather sucked by then.
You act like I don't
But
remember.
yeah, it's it's and then it's putting these first round games at a neutral site like that, or if you're going to put them, if you're going to make it a neutral site, yeah, use some of these lesser known bowl games. But if you're actually going, if you're really wanting to make it mean something a little bit more, yeah, do that. Have them go on. Have them actually make it like another home game or something like
Yeah.
that. Like you would make it an actual playoff feel, and then go to your neutral site, for your championships.
It's almost like you and I have talked about something like this in our heads before, because that's exactly what I said. I said, send the teams on the road, because I'll tell you this right now. Nick Saban has not played a game above Mason Dixon in 15 years.
Yeah.
I think he might have been the coach of the Dolphins the last time he played a game above Mason Dixon.
The only thing that I actually would have an issue with with this is, and I'm gonna sound, I'm gonna come off a little participation trophy like with this. If you get, let's say, like a Notre Dame, or let's say you get a group of five, not a power five, but you get a group of five in there.
So like a
Let's say
UCF or a Cincinnati.
like a UCF or a Cincinnati, and they actually fought their tails off, won their conference, and their reward is they have to go to Tuscaloosa or Columbus.
Yeah, but the thing is, now think of it this way. We talked about the NFL. Browns had to beat the Steelers in the last game of the season last year and then go to Pittsburgh, which is like the house of horrors for the Cleveland Browns. And I think that's what made it that much sweeter, that and Ben Roethlisberger crying. But wait till you hear what I
Make
gotta
the
say
world a
about that.
better place. Punch a squealer fan in the face. I'm sorry. It's as Clevelanders, that's what we have. It's if you got people in that market, I'm sorry. It's not black and gold. It's black and urine.
No, I got one better than that. My aunt sent me a picture of a toilet a few years ago. It was all Ohio State. You open it up, and the Michigan logo's on the inside, and next to it was a terrible towel to wipe yourself with. But
and yet I love Britt Baker in AEW, so that's the only good thing to come out of Pittsburgh,
That and Pat McAfee.
Yeah, I'll give you Pat McAfee.
Have you watched his stuff?
Yes.
Oh my god.
I love Pat McAfee. I'm sorry. I'm an Adam Cole Bebe fan. Okay. I know it was all plotted, but I'm a Chugs McMuffin fan. Okay.
Did you see the clip when they did the draft and the Packers drafted Jordan Love?
That one I did not, but my personal favorite was when he actually announced the pick a few years ago and said, "You people don't know who I am because we did not punt very often against the Tennessee Titans."
That was a WWE promo.
And he hadn't even signed his contract with them yet.
I know. I'm sending you that video, by the way. The one dude he's a buddy of Pat's from when he was a kid. He's such a big Packer fan, he bought a share of the team. He's impersonating Mel Kiper, and they drafted Jordan Love. He got up and left. And the hilarity that ensues after that is just off the charts. I will send it to you when we're done.
Absolutely.
So we both agree expansion should have happened years ago. We both agree you should win a conference championship now to get a high seed. What do you think teams have to do to be one of those at-large bids? Because it sounds like they're going to the group of five is going to get their best team in. So a Cincinnati, a UCF, somebody like that. I will say this: they cannot start the new playoff till after the Army-Navy game. That should still be a standalone its own thing.
Absolutely. Yep.
That needs to stay. So if it goes, let's say it goes to 8, for those other 2 at larges, do you need resume? Are we talking strength of schedule? Are we talking it's the team that blew the most teams out? If you're sitting in that room, what are you going to make your criteria to put that team in the playoff?
I'm going to tell you the first thing I'm going to do right now is all of these teams. It's going to be quality wins, and what I mean by that is I'm not going to um Florida. Me being a Gator fan right now, playing somebody to fill up a schedule that comes completely off the books. These cupcake Ohio State scheduling like Akron or Toledo or Youngstown State, these fluff tune-up pickup games are basically thrown out the window. It's your strength of schedule against your legitimate conference contenders. It's your conference play. It's who you schedule. Start scheduling quality out of conference opponents. I understand that some of these other schools need their paydays, but when it actually comes down to it, if that's going to be the one extra win to get you in, no, thank you.
It's like you and I are the same wavelength. So I don't know if you saw this because again, I know they're not your forte. They've got a home and home with Alabama coming up in the next few years. Next year starts the home and home, I believe, with Texas.
That I did see, yes.
Yep. So, and I think next year starts with Texas, and then after that home and home, it's a home and home with Notre Dame. So teams in the North, and I'm not just saying Ohio State, teams in the North, they want to schedule these games, and they really do if you think about it. I mean, look, they're not in the North, but now they know they have to schedule it. Dabo scheduled Georgia. You have Ohio State scheduled bringing Oregon over. You have teams like years ago, Michigan State went out to Oregon when the year Mariota won the Heisman.
Yeah, but let's also remember for 1 second that even going back to I can't remember who it was before Herb.
Fickle,
and even maybe even
Tressel.
before him. Remember, didn't it? Yeah, didn't Tressel also schedule like some Pac-12 games with like Washington and Oregon? Didn't he do that? And then they got away from that for a while.
They didn't so much get away from it as, let me see, when Tressel was there the last few years, you're talking they had a home and home with Miami. They had a home and home with Texas. They had a home and home with USC too during Tressel's run. Because I remember I was at a Buffalo Wild Wings here where I live, and I remember Laurinaitis standing up Reggie Bush in the hole going into the end zone. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. So they would schedule those games. Obviously, Fickle was the 1 year that they played Cal. Cal came in and they beat Cal, and then the next year it was Kenny Guyton who threw the 90-yard touchdown to Devin Smith at Cal in Urban's first year.
But again, it's Cal.
Those games. Yeah, I understand it's Cal. But now
it wasn't Oregon, it wasn't USC, it wasn't UCLA, it wasn't Washington, it was Cal.
It was Cal, and then they've opened with Oregon State a couple of times. They had the home and home with Virginia Tech, which Blacksburg is not an easy place to play. It's been 6 years since
tell North Carolina that after the other night.
I know. It's been 6 years since Braxton Miller's B button in Madden, since that spin move.
And I have not played a Madden game in probably 15 years because it's so analytical and technical anymore. It turns me off.
It's garbage. The only game I play on the Xbox right now is the show.
It's I don't even play. I just started. I'm Google everything, so I'm on Stadia. I won't even touch Madden, and I won't even. I'm actually waiting for them to be able to get the okay to be able to put NHL 22 on it. Nice. Coming up for this year.
Nice.
I want to be able to play as my Blues, my Sabres, my Islanders, and throw in some Seattle Kraken while we're in it.
Nice. Yeah, no, the day I found out that Xbox got the rights to put the show on the Xbox, I ordered it.
I hear that they're, because of also part of the NIL agreement, they could be remaking a college football game.
It's not even could be. Next year, the EA NCAA will be out. I have NCAA 14 for the PlayStation 3.
You
With
know,
Denard Robinson on
here's
the
what's
cover.
funny. We talk about all this NIL and
Yeah.
with everything going on with it. Keep in mind that if you go back with those old games, how many of us sat back and took our favorite team or even just set aside an entire like week or couple of weeks and went down the rosters and started filling out names and then heard Brad Nessler actually saying them in the game?
I got news for you. I put my own name in there and do the run for the Heisman.
Yeah, but let's also be honest. This Martinez is a fairly common name. If I'm putting Rex Grossman, that's not a common name in there, and I'm actually hearing Rex Grossman dropping back for my Gators at that point,
That was
there's
huge.
you had to know something else was up.
Yeah, no, I agree. So there are two more things I want to hit with you tonight because we are already into 40
Sure.
minutes.
Yeah, we're gonna need to do this again very soon.
Next week I do because this is how much I get into it in football season. Even though I'm not the biggest football guy, I still got to get into the Mets, who their winning streak got snapped a few minutes ago. But I do a Buckeye preview every Saturday, and I couldn't do it this week because we had stuff with the baby going on. And I'll do it before Saturday because his baptism is this Saturday.
Oh,
Before
congratulations!
Thank you. But every Sunday morning I'm here and I'm previewing the Browns games, and I'm going to show you this. I did their schedule. I signed it. I got them at 12-5.
You're low.
Are you serious?
I got them 14-3.
You know what the funny thing is? I thought about that, but there's two trap games I don't like. And that was at New England, and I think they're going to split with Baltimore and Pittsburgh, home and home.
No, I don't at all. It is, so I take that this is our transition now.
This is our transition because the other night I did a with Willie Epting Jr. on the Shakeback Media Group. I did a football preview. It was myself, two ladies who are in sports radio in Cleveland, which was awesome, and then people from around the league. The one woman, her name was Ruth. She actually writes for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Another guy runs a sports network on the West Coast. Do you know four of us picked the Browns to go to the big one? And the guy from the West Coast was the fourth.
Nezzy, it's and ladies and gentlemen, I've actually been calling him that for 25 years. Nezzy, that's if I gotta say this: if they're not there this year, it's next, guaranteed. Because I will say this: and we're on the eve of this coming Thursday starts the whole thing going, and I will say this: the only team in the AFC that I think stands in the Browns' way. Take a guess who you think
You were going to say Buffalo.
You think I think it is? Yes,
you were going to say
the Buffalo Bills. I'm not. I do not think the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm sorry, to get there 3 years in a row, especially now as stacked as the AFC is. I think the Buffalo Bills, had they not taken their foot off the gas, would have not only won that game, but broke their Super Bowl drought because they would have handed Tom Brady his ass.
I got news for you, and I will swear this to the day I die. If the refs don't blow that call with the helmet to helmet that caused that turnover in the end zone,
yes,
we are looking at a Cleveland Browns Buffalo Bills AFC Championship game, and not for nothing, Kevin Stefanski would have run the ball down Buffalo's throat. And
yes,
they would have.
It would have been regardless of which way it would have gone out. Whether we're talking, Browns Bucks or Bills Bucks at that point, Browns Bills would have been a hell of a game. It would have been the game of the year.
By the way, I
tell you this much: it would have turned out to a hell of a lot better Super Bowl than the crap that we actually ended up having to shove a spoon fed to us in February.
Yeah, but let's digress for one thing. If any of us would have remembered that they lost half their offensive line in the championship game, I think we would have known what was coming.
Yeah.
Because I was on with a Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast the night before the Super Bowl with a former Tampa Bay Buccaneer. And somebody had mentioned to me, because I picked Kansas City to win, and they had said, their offensive line is hurt. I said, yeah, I'm changing my pick. Because listen, as good as Patrick Mahomes is, we learned in the Freddie Kitchens era, you can have everything you want on the outside. If those 5 dudes in the front can't protect your quarterback's not going to be any good. He scrambled for 500 yards. Think about that. He put up more offense scrambling than both teams combined in that game.
That is very, very true. The reason why I say that your 12-5 prediction is low is, keep this in mind. The Browns, out of camp, cut Kadarius Hodge, who was one of their biggest fill-ins after the COVID strike hit, and Odell got hurt last year, and he's going to immediately jump onto somebody else's roster as no worse than a third option, if not a second. That's how deep this franchise is.
Yeah,
they kept 10 offensive linemen out of camp. Think of this, because you still have the best offensive line in football, and it's not even close. If your quarterback stays upright with all the weapons that they have, as deep as they are, the one player from the Browns to watch out for, and he just came out of camp and he just made the team as a 6th-round pick, Demetric Felton out of UCLA.
Look, I will say this, and I have not been as up on this because we've had stuff going on with we had the baby in April, so I've been obviously distracted, and that's far more important than my fun with this. But I will say this: when Baker said Demetric Felton was a huge piece of that offense, I went, "Oh, Stefanski's got him some weapons."
This is back-to-back years in the 6th rounds. Last year it was DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now you got Felton this year. They decided to keep this kid even after having Beckham, Landry, Peoples-Jones, Hollywood Higgins as basically their top 4 receivers, and this kid can play either. Here's how good this kid was: is that you've got Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, and also one of the best fullbacks in the game, and Andy Janovich, and you decided even still to not only keep Dearness Johnson, but add a 4th receiver, meaning that you're going a little bit thinner in the secondary, because and that's actually, and this is perfect, is because by keeping this much talent on offense and maybe going a little thinner, if you go to a 4-2-5, they've got 5 safeties, they've got 5 cornerbacks, which is not a lot, let's be honest here. You've got 10 defensive backs, but if the offense is running 6, 7, 8-minute drives because everyone is still upright and you're able to plug guys in, provided Baker doesn't actually end up like blowing out an ACL in the first 2 or 3 weeks, and I can't believe I just said that and putting that out into the world. There's no limit as to where this team can go, is because the defense is going to get all the rest that they want, because of the fact that the offense is going to be chewing up so much yardage and clock. It's going to be insane.
You know
what they're going to remind me of? Remember when the Minnesota Vikings had their 15-1 year and were
Randall
basically
Cunningham,
just
Randy
chewing?
Moss, Chris Carter.
Yeah, it's because it was the fact that they could score at will, but it's also the fact that they were so talented and deep on the offensive line with all of those skill players that they knew that they could do whatever they wanted with the ball anytime they wanted. You want to run me down for a 10-minute drive, you're going to get a 10-minute drive. You want a 75-yard bomb on the second play from scrimmage, you're going to get a 75-yard bomb on the second play from scrimmage.
I agree. And listen, you are talking about now, remember, when I'm talking about the night I went to Ohio State and did the show there, that was the night after Baker beat the Jets.
Our savior, and you know me, I'm not a religious man. For me to say that is something.
I am Now, you knew me when I was more a Jet fan than Browns fan.
By the way, Bud Light, I'm still waiting for my free beer from that night.
Oh, no. The things were unlocked.
I understand. I understand that, but I couldn't get anywhere near a bar to get my free beer. Dilly.
I was at my sister's, and because I drove out on Thursday, because we were leaving for Columbus on Friday, game on Saturday. I went home Sunday, so I drove out on Thursday. I go to my sister's for that game, and I've never experienced this watching from home outside of something that happened 20 years ago when Piazza hit the home run. You could feel the electricity coming through the TV.
Mm-hmm.
When Baker came on the field after Tyrod got hurt, you could feel the electricity come through the TV. And for all the haters that are on TV, it makes me laugh when guys like Mike Greenberg, who is a Jet fan and has never seen a good quarterback since Joe Namath. Well, no, Chad was good.
I mean, he did see a quarterback run up his own offensive lineman's ass, so he's got that.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Listen, I love Mark Sanchez is the perfect example of how Baker Mayfield could have ended up if this team didn't build around him as opposed to tear it down around him.
I think part of the reason why the energy was that night is because they knew that all the different factors, and I can't believe we're going back 4 years to think about this. He was the number one pick. He couldn't get on the field because the coaching staff was absolutely incompetent. Hugh Jackson was coaching for his job, did not want to put the number one pick on the field when you hadn't won a game in 630 plus days. Mm-hmm. What is that? That's all you needed to know right there. And that's why, even though you're living in New York, you celebrate January 31st, just like the rest of us. 1/31. It's Hugh Jackson Day.
I agree. And I laugh about it. So most of us who picked the Browns to go to the Super Bowl had them playing against Tampa Bay. I will say this to you, and then we're going to wrap up for tonight. And in a couple of weeks, we'll come back and revisit all this.
You got it.
They asked me who I thought was going to win, and I said these words. In February, we will see what happens normally in November when a guy who went to Michigan can't beat a team from Ohio.
You want to know what's funny? As much as I hate Pittsburgh, as we all do, I had to agree, and it aggravated my acid reflux like no tomorrow right before dinner to listen to Andrew Filipponi, the Pittsburgh drive guy,
Shill
on CBS National saying pretty much the only reason that Jim Harbaugh still has his job is because he doesn't have that loss to a non-Power 5 team. Is that really where we've come to anymore? But but getting back to the Browns, we've got tickets. We're going to the home opener. We're fully vaxxed and everything. We're gonna be in a suite. I'm not trying to shill or anything like that. So at least this way I can enjoy my first Browns game in a couple of years. I was there when I was there 2 years ago on the Sunday night game where they wouldn't give the ball to Nick Chubb at the 5-yard line against the Rams. And you know me, diehard Rams fan as well. My father almost threatened to leave me there, even though I drove that night because I had my Rams shirt underneath my Browns jersey. In a suite, nonetheless. I was there 3 years ago where they beat Baltimore with 2 seconds left, where the ball had orange paint on it, going over the upright on the field goal. Yep. They're going to hang 40 against the Texans defense in week 2. People saying, panic whether or not if they lose this game to Kansas City, let it be respectable. Even if you're blown out, it's fine. Because let's face it, the Pittsburgh Steelers, your typical rival, are running out there a 39-year-old Ben Roethlisberger who cannot throw the ball more than 25 yards down the field with no offensive line and the worst running game in football. And that's supposed to be your rival. I said it the day that he said that he restructured his deal. Ben Roethlisberger, even though he's got 2 Super Bowls and he's a future Hall of Famer, is now the 4th best quarterback in that division. I say even Joe Burrow, coming off an ACL, is better for the Bengals than Ben Roethlisberger is for the Steelers. Lamar Jackson cannot get out of his own way, and especially now losing J.K. Dobbins, this is where I think, yes, the Browns do split against the Ravens. They sweep the Steelers, they sweep the Bengals, and at that point, take your 2 losses anywhere else you want.
I have them beating Kansas City in week 1.
I do too.
Not only because what no one's talking about is like, oh, they got all this in front of Mahomes. They didn't upgrade the defense.
No.
And the Browns are healthy. So now you can't stick your number 1 corner and have Honey Badger over the top of Jarvis. You have to have him over the top of Odell. And we know Odell can outrun both of those dudes.
And here's also the thing. Odell Beckham Jr. is coming back from a torn ACL in 8 months, and he's faster than when he was before. Donovan Peoples-Jones is faster than OBJ and put on 20 pounds of muscle in the offseason. He's still undersized. He's still going to run by any cornerback in the league. You cannot cover all 3 of them at once. And if you do, who's going to put a body on Austin Hooper? Who's going to put a body on Hollywood Higgins? And then you're not going to have enough bodies in the box for Felton, Chubb, Hunt, Janovich, whoever, or even Baker if he actually decides to get cute. Just don't be like Lamar and actually, put your knee out there. That's why the Baltimore Ravens also this year don't impress me. And this is how big the J.K. Dobbins injury is for them, is because now you're going to see defenses putting 7-8 guys in the box to be able to try and contain him. Because if you force Lamar Jackson to try and beat you with his arm, you're going to win all day as opposed to beating him with his legs.
Exactly. Now, here's where the game of the year last year obviously was that Browns-Ravens Monday night game, which was awesome.
Which half the city of Cleveland shut off at halftime, and then actually were like, "Oh crap, I've got to turn this back on."
I watched every snap. Every snap.
Half of us were asleep. I was guilty.
Dude, I watched every snap, and here's why I watched every snap. If the Browns would have had the talent in the secondary and the linebacking core that they now have, do you know how big of a steal JOK was in round 2? Do you even understand how huge of a steal he was?
I can't. I wanted Ojulari out of Texas with that second first round pick this year. When he didn't go off with that where they ended up taking Newsome. When they didn't get him, and then I was actually driving to my grandmother's that morning, and I actually heard that they had picked up JOK. I literally pulled off to the side of the road and called my dad, and I said, Andrew Berry needs a statue downtown by the end of this season.
Yeah.
And that's the Browns general manager for any of you out there who don't follow this team, and that's your fault.
Yeah. As Jim Rome said, they are America's team.
Or as our buddy Mr. Aaron Seacrest Pantsley himself said, you're Cleveland America Browns. Not Cleveland, Ohio, Cleveland America.
America. Okay, speaking of pants, I'll hit this real quick and then we'll call it a night. What do you think of the new name?
I honestly have zero problem with it. I really don't, because I think it was time for the change. And I was going to do a blog about this when it happened, but I'm kind of in that mode where anyone who goes to the blog will see that there's a bunch of teams that I haven't covered yet. And the only 2 sports franchises that I've actually done multiple entries on were the Toronto Raptors and my St. Louis Blues. I naturally I had to do something the night after the Blues won the Cup in 2019. I didn't actually want to give the Indians that kind of write up here because it was going to be something that I could have rambled on and on for. And I know people when they read blogs, they don't actually want to read War and Peace. But I have no problem with the name. I think it actually needed to be done. And here's where they got it right, is because they had this done from the minute that they actually announced in January that they were going to change the name to the time that they actually had it done with logos and everything. The Washington football team is still 2 years in and haven't even decided on a name yet. And we're thinking of leaving it the same way. I'm sorry, it reeks of soccer, which we're not. We'll cover that next time. It's because that's a whole can of worms we don't want to open up. But honestly, if you get Tom Hanks to narrate anything, I'm sold. You could have named them. You could have named them the Spiders, which a lot of people were thinking of, which I actually would have liked. Maybe have some legs coming out of the corners of the Block C. I like the new Block C with the Guardians. I think it's a simple fix because you just got to change a couple of letters on the name. I don't like the winged C logo, the G logo. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the god awful Anaheim Angels logo with the wing on the A from the Jim Edmonds era when they wore navy blue. I don't like that, but I like the Block C so much more.
Do you want me to show you something you won't be able to unsee? That's what the back.
You do realize we're all going to be going to. We're going to be all going to.
That's what the back of the sheet looks like.
You want me to tell you something you're not going to be able to unhear?
What?
You know how they actually call our arena downtown Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse? Our afternoon drive guy here in Cleveland, Alan Cox on WMMS, has actually kind of quote unquote named the arena Romo Fijo, which I like. They're already starting to think of calling the baseball field the G spot.
That's amazing. Now, I will say this. I like the name change. I think they should have went with Pants' logo.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Because if you remember, Pants originally pitched that for the Browns in 2018.
Yeah. I like the Buzzards one he did too to honor MMS. I mean, that was your guys' thing growing up. Too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I still listen to MMS. I grew up on MMS. We all grew up on MMS at some point, even if it's now like they've got Rover in the morning and then Alan Cox in the afternoon, and they're only playing music between 11 and 2, and then after 7, and they're playing Indians games and Cavs games, and we'll probably talk Cavs the next time here, especially with all the moves that they've made and everything. We'll probably talk a little hockey the next time as well here. But it's we all grew up on MMS, but I don't think that there's ever a way that they would have you not only would have had to go through the station, you would have also had to go through iHeartMedia, and I don't think that actually would have flown. Is at least going with the Buzzard logo and the likeness. I like the idea. I don't think it would have, and I hate to use the pun here, I don't think it would have flown very well with that. It would have, the Guardians it was the right call to make.
It was. It really was. So I'm going to tell you, speaking of Cleveland radio, I'm going to tell you one last tidbit, and then I'm going to get where the blog can be found, and then we're going to sign off. So my son, the baby, his name is Robert Edward Martinez. His initials are REM. Do you remember when they changed 107.9 from the rock station to the rap station? They played that song and locked the door. Do you remember that?
You want to tell the story? You want to tell the story, or should I?
I'll do it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but they got the kill date of 107.9 The End, which was the alternative rock station in Cleveland in the 90s. And on the way out the door, who was the DJ that everybody absolutely loved from there?
I don't remember.
But it was him. He put REM's.
It wasn't Slats, was it?
It might have been Slats.
because I know Slats also did time at MMS and is now working mornings at 98.5, but I don't remember if he did 107.9. We can look this up and like, add on to it later.
So Slats or whoever it was put the song "It's the End of the World as We Know It" by REM on repeat. And did he break the key off in the lock to the
He did. He did.
To the DJ booth?
It was the station was doing a format change, and they were changing their name. I think it went from like the hip hop station or something to the alternative rock station. So they put this song on repeat for 24 straight hours. And I can't even remember if there were even commercial breaks with that. It's and stations have done this before, but they also put in commercial breaks. And I'll tell a story about my Blues here, very quick one here in a second. But he breaks the key off in the lock, according to legend, and has the song on run for 24 straight hours until the format switch hits the following morning. And then 107.9 is like the station that everybody decides to listen to, for years. And then as we all know, the 90s radio turned to crap.
Well, it was longer than that because the format changed from the alternative station to the rap station or rap hip hop station was the day after Labor Day. He did it on Friday.
That's right, because I only remember it because we were still in junior high where we could still get bused home, and all of the bus drivers had radios in there and they were playing it. We were all trying to figure out what the F was going on.
Exactly.
And you can bleep that out if you have to.
No, I don't edit, believe it or not.
It's because I said other stations have done this. When my St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup in 2019, and I don't know if the video of this is going to come up, I actually spent more money on Blues championship merchandise than when our hometown Cavs won in 2016. It's the Blues. Yeah, I probably dropped. I'm not going to actually mention the amount because of some of the other people that might be listening to this later on. But it was definitely in the 3-figure range.
Wow.
And it was everyone remembers when they were playing Gloria all through it, Laura Branigan's Gloria. Well, KMOX, which is actually the news station in St. Louis, was broadcasting Blues games. Decided the following morning that they were going to put 24 hours of Gloria on, but they still had their commercial breaks. They still had their news breaks. 107.9, when they made the change, it was 24 hours straight because they couldn't get into the studio to activate the commercials. Again, according to legend.
It wasn't even legend. I remember turning that on 4 or 5 times that weekend because we had heard it on, like, someone had said they were going to do it. And they did it, and it was just hilarious. So
you remember the Monday that after that happened when we all the Tuesday because they even still ran it through Labor Day because the change was actually going to take effect either like that Monday, the Labor Day, or the next day, and everyone was actually up first thing in the morning because everyone was exhausted going back to school the next day because we all had to figure out what was going to be the first song that they were going to play at 6 a.m. when they finally got control of the station and went live.
Well, it wasn't when we were in junior high. That's when you and I were in college because Frank came running into the computer lab to let us know they did.
My brother Frank.
Yeah. And you and I were like, get out of here. Come on. And we went home Friday and all that weekend it played. So let me ask you this. Where can we find your amazing sports blog, which we will get into your Mets story next time?
You can find me online at jcbluenote24.blogspot.com. It's been active about 5 years. I'm Google everything. I'm doing this on a Chromebook right now. It's actually run through Google's blog system. It's all the graphics are my own. I try to avoid using authentic team logos and everything, because I don't trust me, you and I know first off with licensing and everything. It's I'll actually go. There will be certain periods where I might go a couple of weeks, couple of months. I remember last year with the pandemic, I took a 9-month break just because I was just burned out and also working 80 hours a week. But it's jcbluenote24.blogspot.com. If you hate the St. Louis Blues, stay away from it because the entire blog is littered in Blues colors. Deal with it.
And as always, everyone, Big Rican can be found here on YouTube, also on Facebook, Big Rican on Sports, on Twitter at Big Rican on Sport, and of course, Google, Anchor, Breaker, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and ask Alexa to play Big Rican on Sports. Jim, give me a couple weeks. I got to get through a few things, and we will come back on. And right before the baseball playoffs, we'll get going again. But old friend, it was good to see you. I am so glad we got this to work, and this was fun. This was a lot of fun.
Nezzy, this is not going to take 20 years to be able to try and set up. Let's make this a monthly thing if we can, if not sooner than that. This is way overdue. We've just done an hour and 10 minutes. We could probably do 2 or 3 more, but we've all got to get to bed before too long. I know you've got the kid, and everything, and your wonderful wife, and I've actually, it's not quite Twilight, but I still have tonight's Hallmark movie to end up watching tomorrow morning. Yes, my grandmother got me hooked on the Hallmark Channel. It was one of our things before she passed away, and it's and then I got to get ready for the AEW All Out pay-per-view tomorrow night because I'm definitely not missing CM Punk's return.
Nice. Well, listen, you take care of yourself. Enjoy the pay-per-view, and I'll talk to you in a few weeks.
Love you, Nezzy. We'll talk soon.
Take care, man. See ya.